The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It worked on every species that had ever entered it. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top, drifting between massive pillars carved from asteroids. The floor was transparent, showing the endless void of space below, with distant galaxies spinning in the darkness. Floating platforms held representatives from over 800 alien civilizations, each one watching the center of the room, where a single human woman stood alone. Ambassador Elena Vasquez did not look small. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her gray uniform crisp and unwrinkled despite the 18-hour journey through hyperspace. She was 61 years old, with silver hair cut short and dark eyes that revealed nothing of what she was thinking. Around her, beings of every imaginable shape whispered to each other. Some were giants made of living crystal. Others were clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields. A few were so strange that human eyes could not fully process what they were seeing. All of them had one thing in common. They were afraid, not of the humans standing before them. That would have been absurd. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 11 years ago. They were infants compared to civilizations that had ruled the stars for millions of years. No, the representatives were afraid because of what the humans had done to the Dominion fleet. High Chancellor Morvith raised one of his 6 arms, and silence fell across the chamber. He was a towering figure covered in black scales, his eyes glowing with an inner fire that had intimidated 1,000 species into submission. The Valdarin had founded the Galactic Empire 2 million years ago, and they had never lost their grip on power. "You stand accused?" Morvith said, his voice echoing through systems that translated it into every known language, of destroying Imperial property. 112,000 vessels, 23 billion crew members, the entire Dominion fleet eliminated in what your species calls a single day. Elena said nothing. She had been instructed to wait. Furthermore, Morvith continued, you have refused to acknowledge Imperial authority. You have declared your solar system closed to all Imperial traffic. You have rejected our generous offer of protected status. A ripple of disbelief passed through the assembled representatives. Protected status was the kindest fate any primitive species could hope for. It meant slow absorption into the Empire rather than immediate harvesting. How does humanity answer these charges? Elena finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. The Dominion fleet entered our solar system without permission. They announced their intention to collect our population for processing. We defended ourselves. Defended yourselves? Morvath's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. You are a species that discovered fire only moments ago by galactic standards. The Dominion fleet was the most powerful armada in 3 sectors. How could you possibly have defended yourselves? That is not your concern. The chamber went completely silent. No one spoke to the High Chancellor that way. No one. Morvith leaned forward, his fiery eyes narrowing. Then let me make something your concern, human. The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 2 million years. We have absorbed over 12,000 species. Some joined willingly. Most did not. But all of them eventually understood the simple truth of the universe. He paused, letting his words sink in. There is the Empire, and there is nothing. Those are the only options. Your species destroyed our fleet through some trick we have not yet understood. But tricks do not win wars. Resources win wars. Numbers win wars. The Empire has both in quantities your primitive minds cannot comprehend. Elena remained perfectly still. Is that a threat, High Chancellor? It is a fact. You have 2 choices. Surrender your world for processing, and we will allow 10% of your population to survive as a labor force. Refuse, and we will send a fleet so large that your tricks will be meaningless. Either way, humanity ends today. The representatives watched eagerly. They had seen this moment many times before. The small species always broke. They begged for mercy, offered anything for survival, debased themselves in ways that provided entertainment for decades afterward. Elena Vasquez did something different. She smiled. "High Chancellor, I am going to show you something. My government authorized this demonstration as a courtesy, so that your empire might understand exactly what it faces." She reached into her pocket and removed a small device, no larger than her thumb. Security systems throughout the chamber immediately locked onto her, ready to vaporize the human at the first sign of a weapon. But the device did nothing aggressive. Instead, it projected a hologram that expanded to fill the center of the chamber. The hologram showed Earth, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, a world that looked fragile, an exposed dot. Then the view pulled back. Surrounding Earth was a network of installations that had not been there 11 years ago. Massive structures orbited the planet, the moon, and stretched throughout the asteroid belt. But these were not weapons platforms. They were something else entirely. When the Dominion fleet arrived, Helena explained, we activated a system we call Project Guardian. Our scientists spent 8 years studying the wreckage of the Imperial probe that crashed in our Pacific Ocean. We learned how your technology works. We learned how it connects. And we learned its greatest weakness. The hologram shifted, showing the Dominion fleet emerging from hyperspace. 112,000 vessels, enough firepower to crack planets. Then the hologram showed what happened next. It was not an explosion. It was not a beam of energy. It was simply a signal sent from Earth at the speed of light, carrying a mathematical pattern that human programmers had spent nearly a decade perfecting. The signal reached the fleet's networked computer systems. And then, like a virus spreading through blood, it moved from ship to ship, following the quantum connections that linked every Imperial vessel together. Within seconds, the entire fleet shut down. Life support failed. Navigation locked. Weapons went dark. 112,000 vessels became 112,000 tombs drifting in the void. Your technology is your strength, Helena said. It allows you to coordinate fleets across impossible distances. But it is also your weakness, because anything connected to your network can be reached by anyone who understands how the network functions. Morvath's scales had stopped rippling. He was completely still. We have positioned similar systems at 17 locations throughout Imperial space, Helena continued, including one location that your most classified records say does not exist. The location of your central core, the processing hub that controls all Imperial technology. Now the chamber erupted. Representatives screamed in terror, demanded explanations, accused each other of betraying secrets. The central core was known only to the highest levels of Imperial leadership. Its location was the most guarded secret in the galaxy. Helena waited for the chaos to quiet before speaking again. We do not want war. We did not ask to be discovered. We did not ask to be threatened with extinction. But we will not be harvested like animals. We will not surrender our world. She looked directly at Morvath. So here is humanity's warning. The only warning we will ever give. Stay away from Earth. Do not enter our solar system. Do not approach our colonies. Do not contact us unless you are prepared to speak as equals. And if we refuse, then we send one signal to your central core, and everything your empire depends on stops working. Every ship, every station, every life support system on every world you control. 3 trillion beings, all dead in moments. Morvath stared at the human for a long time. Then he leaned back in his throne and said the words that would change galactic history. You are bluffing. Elena's smile faded. Then call our bluff. But understand that we only give one warning. This was it. The silence lasted for exactly 7 seconds. Then High Chancellor Morvith laughed that it was not a pleasant sound. It rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder, and several of the smaller species actually retreated deeper into their floating platforms. When the Valderan laughed, it usually meant someone was about to die. Bluffing, Morvith repeated, his fiery eyes fixed on Elena. That is what your species does, is it not? We have studied you since our probe first detected your radio signals. You are creatures of deception. You lie to each other. You lie to yourselves. Why should we believe you would not lie to us? Elena did not react. The Dominion fleet was not a lie. The Dominion fleet was a surprise. There is a difference. Morvith rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across half the chamber. You found some trick to disable our vessels. A clever trick, I admit. But you made a fatal error in your calculations, human. And what error would that be? You assumed our technology was uniform. Morvith gestured, and a hologram appeared beside Elena's projection. It showed a fleet unlike the Dominion ships, vessels that looked older, rougher, less refined. The Imperial Core Fleet uses systems that predate our current network by 200,000 years. They are not connected. They cannot be reached by your signal, and they are already on their way to your world. For the first time, something flickered across Elena's face. It might have been concern. It might have been calculation. None of the watching aliens could tell which. How many ships? She asked. 3 million. Crewed by species that do not rely on networked technology. The Harvok use biological computing grown from living tissue. The Vrel navigate by pure instinct, with brains evolved to calculate hyperspace trajectories without mechanical assistance. Your trick will not work on them. Elena turned to face the assembled representatives. The Empire is sending 3 million ships to destroy a single planet because we refuse to let them harvest our population. I want every species here to remember that. I want you to remember what the Empire does to those who say no. We do what is necessary, Morvith replied. The galaxy is a garden. We tend it. We prune what does not serve the greater whole. You mean you take what you want and destroy what you cannot use. Is there a difference? Behind Elena, a door opened. She had been expecting this moment. 5 more humans entered the chamber, escorted by Imperial security drones. Commander David Okover walked at the front, his military uniform marking him as Earth's defense representative. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Mendez, the scientist who had designed Project Guardian. Then Foreign Secretary Marcus Bell, Trade Minister Amara Diallo, and finally, a man whose presence caused whispers to spread through the watching aliens. His name was Thomas Gray, and he should not have been there. Thomas Gray had been dead for 6 years. His ship had been captured by the Dominion during their initial approach to Earth's solar system. According to Imperial records, he had been processed for biological material along with his entire crew. Yet here he stood, walking calmly into the chamber of the beings who had supposedly killed him. Morveth's scales rippled with genuine surprise. Impossible. You were terminated. Thomas smiled. It was not a friendly expression. The Dominion believed that. They were wrong. Explain. When your ships captured my vessel, your soldiers made an assumption that cost them everything. They assumed humans were like every other species you had. Encountered. Soft, fragile. Unable to survive outside controlled conditions. Thomas stepped forward, until he was standing beside Elena. We are not like other species. The hologram Elena had projected shifted again, showing the interior of a Dominion harvesting ship. The footage was grainy, clearly recorded in secret, but the details were unmistakable. Human prisoners being led toward processing chambers. Guards that seemed bored, unconcerned. They had done this 1,000 times before. Then the footage showed what happened. Next, the humans did not walk into the processing chambers. They turned on their guards instead. But it was not the fighting that made the watching aliens uncomfortable. It was the way the humans fought. No technology. No weapons. Just hands, teeth, and a ferocity that seemed to come from somewhere primal and unstoppable. The guards were twice human size. They had been bred for combat across 10,000 generations. They lasted approximately 4 minutes. We took the ship, Thomas continued. We took 3 more before your fleet realized something was wrong. And we transmitted everything we learned back to Earth before your commanders could stop us. The signal you used against the fleet, Morvith said slowly. You learned how to create it from captured technology. We learned everything from captured technology. Your operating systems, your security protocols, your communication networks. Thomas's smile widened. Your central core coordinates. The chamber exploded into chaos again. Representatives screamed accusations at each other, demanded to know how humans could have obtained such classified information. Several delegations began preparing emergency transmissions to their home worlds. If the central core was compromised, everything was at risk. Morvith raised his arm for silence, but this time it took longer to achieve. Fear was spreading through the assembly like a disease. You are still bluffing, the High Chancellor said. But there was something in his voice that had not been there before. Uncertainty. Even if you know where the core is located, you could never reach it. The defenses are impenetrable. Elena exchanged a glance with her colleagues. Then she nodded to Dr. Mendez, who stepped forward. High Chancellor, the central core is located in a pocket dimension created by folding space-time around a stabilized singularity. Entrance requires passing through 17 separate security fields, each one capable of destroying anything that does not carry the correct Imperial signature. The facility is monitored by 600 billion automated defense systems and staffed by over 2 million guards selected from the most loyal species in your empire. Morvith's eyes narrowed. You should not know any of that. We know all of it. We also know something else. Something your own engineers discovered 300 years ago, but classified. So deeply that only 4 beings in the entire empire are aware of it. The High Chancellor went very still. Security fields can be bypassed through quantum entanglement if you possess a fragment of the original singularity used to create the pocket dimension. A fragment that, according to Imperial records, was lost when the research station orbiting your home world was destroyed during the Vrel uprising. Dr. Mendez reached into her pocket and removed a small container. Inside it, suspended in an electromagnetic field, was a speck of absolute darkness that seemed to drink in all the light around it. The research station was not destroyed, she said. It crashed on our planet 65 million years ago. We found it at the bottom of what we call the Gulf of Mexico. We have been studying its contents for the last 3 years. Morvith stared at the fragment of singularity. His scales had gone completely still. Around him, his advisors were frozen in positions of absolute horror. You cannot use that, he whispered. If you destabilize the core, every connected system in the galaxy will collapse. Trillions will die. We know, Elena replied. That is why we are here. That is why we came to negotiate instead of simply acting. Because unlike you, we do not want to destroy. We want to live. We want our species to have a future. And we want to give you one chance to let that happen. She stepped closer to Morvath's throne. The Imperial Core Fleet is 3 days from Earth. Call them back. Recognize our sovereignty. Leave us alone. Do this, and we will never use what we have. Refuse, and we will show you what humans do when they have nothing left to lose. Morvith looked at the tiny human standing before him. For 2 million years, the Valdern had conquered everything in their path. They had never faced a choice like this. They had never been forced to back down. He opened his mouth to respond, and then every light in the chamber went out. The darkness lasted for only 3 seconds. But in that time, the entire galaxy changed. When the lights returned, the human delegation was surrounded by a shimmering barrier that had not existed before. Imperial security drones floated uselessly at the edges, their weapons locked and their targeting systems displaying nothing but static. The representatives on their floating platforms found themselves sealed inside transparent bubbles, unable to move or communicate. Only 2 beings in the entire chamber remained free: Ambassador Elena Vasquez and High Chancellor Morvith. The Valderan leader looked around at his frozen advisors, his paralyzed guards, his helpless representatives. Then he looked at the small human woman who had somehow done this without touching any visible technology. How? He demanded. You asked earlier how we destroyed the Dominion fleet, Elena said. You assumed we used some kind of signal transmitted through your network. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The signal was merely the delivery system. What we actually sent was something far more dangerous. She walked closer to him, each step calm and measured. When humans first discovered your technology, we found something unexpected. Your quantum computing systems operate on principles that our physicists had theorized about but never proven. Specifically, they tap into a layer of reality that exists beneath normal spacetime, a layer where information can move without limitations. Morveth's scales rippled with growing unease. This was knowledge that only the eldest Valderan understood, knowledge that predated the Empire itself. We spent 8 years learning to manipulate that layer, Elena continued. Not through your technology, but alongside it. Our scientists discovered ways to send commands directly into the quantum substrate, commands that your security systems cannot detect because they do not exist in normal space. That is not possible. Your species has existed for barely a moment. The Valderan spent 1,000,000 years developing the ability to touch the substrate. And that, Elena said quietly, is why you never imagined we could do it faster. You assumed evolution was the only path. You never considered that humans might simply skip the evolutionary stage entirely and go straight to the destination. She held up her hand, and a small flame appeared in her palm. Not fire from technology, not a hologram. An actual flame, created by manipulating the quantum substrate directly. We call it the gift, she said. It appeared in our population 6 years ago, shortly after we began studying your crashed probe. At first, only a handful of humans could do it. Now the number is growing. In another generation, it will be common. Morvith stared at the flame. In 2,000,000 years of conquest, the Valderan had never encountered anything like this. Species developed technology. They built tools. They created machines. They did not simply evolve new abilities in the span of a decade. What are you? He whispered. We are humans. That is all we are. There ever been. But you need to understand something about our species, High Chancellor. We adapt, not over millions of years like the Valderan, not over thousands of generations. We adapt in a single lifetime, sometimes faster. The flame vanished. Elena lowered her hand. When your probe crashed on our world, it released quantum radiation into our environment. For most species, this would have been harmless. The radiation requires specific biological receptors to have any effect, receptors that take evolution millions of years to develop. But humans had already developed something similar. We call them mirror neurons. They evolved to help us understand each other, to feel what others feel, to imagine what others imagine. When the quantum radiation encountered these neurons, something unexpected happened. Your people began connecting to the substrate, Morvith said. Without technology, without training, just pure biological evolution, accelerated by environmental pressure. Exactly. And now you understand why we destroyed the Dominion fleet so easily. The signal we sent was not created by machines. It was created by human minds working together, linking their consciousness through the substrate and directing their combined will at your ships. 1,000 humans, thinking as one, telling your technology to stop working. And it obeyed. The High Chancellor was silent for a long moment. Around them, the frozen chamber waited, time itself seemingly suspended. "This changes everything," Morvith finally said. "If your species can access the substrate directly, then your potential is unlimited. In 100 years, you could rival the Valdarin. In 1,000, you could surpass us. Possibly. Then we cannot allow you to exist. No matter the cost, no matter how many die, humanity must be eliminated before you become a threat we cannot overcome." Elena nodded slowly. "I expected you to say that. It is why I prepared for this moment." She gestured, and the barriers around the Imperial representatives disappeared. Movement returned to the chamber. Guards regained control of their weapons. But none of them moved against the humans, because now every representative could see what Elena had done while they were frozen. Floating in the center of the chamber was a holographic display, showing real-time feeds from 17 locations across the galaxy. Each location was a critical Imperial installation: power stations, communication hubs, fleet coordination centers. And at each location, a single human stood, hands raised, flames dancing between their fingers. 1,000 humans with a gift, Elena said, positioned at the 17 most critical points in your empire. If anything happens to Earth, if anything happens to our delegation, if anything happens to any human anywhere in Imperial space, they will act. You would destroy the galaxy? We would do what we have always done when backed into a corner. We would fight with everything we have, regardless of the consequences. That is what humans are, High Chancellor. That is why you should fear us. Not because of our power, but because of what we are willing to sacrifice to survive. Morvith looked at the feeds. He saw humans standing calmly inside Imperial facilities that should have been impossible to penetrate. He saw security forces standing down, unwilling to approach beings that could manipulate reality with their thoughts. He saw an empire that had conquered thousands of species, suddenly facing something it had never encountered before. A species that could not be conquered. "What do you want?" He asked. "What we have always wanted. To be left alone. Recognize Earth and its colonies as sovereign territory. Withdraw the core fleet. Establish diplomatic relations between our species based on mutual respect. Do these things, and we will stand down. We will become a peaceful neighbor instead of a desperate enemy. And if I agree, how do I know you will not simply grow stronger and one day decide to conquer us instead?" Elena smiled, and for the first time, there was warmth in it. "Because that is not who we are. Humans fight when we must, but fighting is not our purpose. We want to explore, to learn, to build, to create. We want to see what the universe holds and add our voice to its story. We do not want your empire, High Chancellor. We just want the freedom to write our own future." Morvith considered this. He thought about the 2 million years of Valdarin dominance, the 12,000 species absorbed into the empire, the countless civilizations crushed because they could not adapt fast enough to survive. He thought about what it would mean to let a species go, to acknowledge that something existed beyond Imperial control, and then he thought about what would happen if he refused. The humans with their gift, growing stronger every generation. The Empire's technology, vulnerable to beings who could reach into the substrate directly. The inevitable war that would end either in humanity's extinction or the Empire's collapse. "I will need to consult with the Council of Elders," he said slowly. "This decision cannot be made by me alone. We understand. How long? 1 rotation of your planet. 12 of your hours. Elena nodded. We will wait. But as the chamber began to return to normal, as representatives recovered from their shock and guards tried to understand what had happened, no one noticed the small device that Thomas Gray had attached to the underside of Morvath's throne, a device that was now transmitting everything it heard directly to Earth. The humans were not going to wait. They were going to be ready. The transmission from Thomas Gray's device revealed the truth within 2 hours. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the small room the Empire had provided for the human delegation, listening to High Chancellor Morvath's voice echo through the secure channel. He was speaking to the Council of Elders, the 7 ancient Valdarin who had ruled the Empire since before most current species had evolved. The humans must be destroyed, Morvath said. I will pretend to negotiate while the core fleet accelerates its approach. When they arrive at Earth, we will eliminate the species entirely. No survivors. No mercy. And the humans with the gift? Asked Elder Vorath, the oldest of the council. The ones positioned at our critical installations? They are bluffing. They must be. No species could place operatives at 17 secured locations without detection. It is an illusion designed to make us hesitate. Elena exchanged glances with her team. Commander Okoffer's jaw tightened. Dr. Mendez began tapping calculations into her personal device. Thomas Gray simply smiled. They are not bluffing, Thomas said quietly. And they know it. Then we proceed with Option Cascade, Elena replied. The room went still. Option Cascade had been designed as a last resort, a contingency that no one had wanted to use. It would change everything. There would be no going back. Are you certain? Commander Okoffer asked. Once we begin, the Empire will never trust us again. Any hope of peaceful coexistence ends. The Empire was never going to coexist with us. Morvath just confirmed that. They see us as a threat to be eliminated, not a neighbor to accept. Elena stood, her face hardening with resolve. Signal Earth. Tell them to begin. 8,000 light-years away, on the planet humanity called home. A message arrived at the defense center, built beneath the Swiss Alps. General, Maria Santos received the coded transmission and understood immediately what it meant. Activate the Dreamers. She ordered in 17 hospitals across Earth. Individuals who had been in medically induced comas for months opened their eyes simultaneously. They were the most powerful humans with the gift, their abilities so strong that they could not function in normal society. For 6 months, they had been kept unconscious, their minds floating in the quantum substrate, spreading through the Empire's technology like ghosts. Now they woke up, and they brought everything they had learned with them, in the chamber of the Galactic Empire. Ambassador Elena suddenly had access to every secret the Valdarin had ever kept. High Chancellor, she said, her voice carrying across the room with unnatural clarity. I know about the processing worlds. Morvath froze. The representatives who had been watching the delayed negotiations suddenly became very attentive. I know about the 57 planets where harvested species are kept alive for biological extraction. I know that the absorption process your empire offers is not integration, but slow disassembly. I know that every species you have ever conquered is still being processed. Their populations maintained just above extinction levels, so they can continue providing resources indefinitely. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Representatives from species that had joined the Empire willingly were staring at Morvath with growing horror. That is a lie, Morvath snarled. Human propaganda designed to divide us. Elena raised her hand, and a hologram appeared showing one of the processing worlds. The images were undeniable. Vast facilities where beings were reduced to their component materials. Fields of tanks containing living members of long-absorbed species, kept conscious while machines extracted their tissues one cell at a time. Horror on an industrial scale, hidden behind the Empire's promises of protection and partnership. The Kalori were promised integration 300,000 years ago, Elena said. According to Imperial records, they were fully absorbed and their culture preserved as historical data. In reality, 40 billion Kalori are still alive on Processing World 17, being harvested continuously because their neural tissue produces compounds that extend Valdaran lifespans. The Kalori representative, a small crystalline being that had always been one of the Empire's most loyal supporters, began making sounds that its translation device could not process. The Mundari were promised protection from a natural disaster 500,000 years ago. The Empire evacuated them from their dying world and supposedly resettled them on a new planet. In reality, they have been on Processing World 23 ever since. Their population maintained at exactly 1 billion individuals. The Mundari delegation erupted in screams of anguish. "This is impossible," Morvith roared. "No human could have accessed that information. The processing worlds exist outside normal space. They cannot be detected by any technology." "They cannot be detected by technology," Elena agreed. "But humans with a gift do not use technology to access the substrate. We use our minds, and our minds can go anywhere." She walked toward the center of the chamber, her team flanking her. "For 6 months, our most powerful gifted have been exploring the substrate. They found your processing worlds. They found your hidden fleets. They found the plans you made to harvest Earth before we ever knew you existed. And they found something else." Thomas Gray stepped forward, his expression grim. "They found the first species." The chamber went completely silent. Even Morvith seemed shocked. "The first species is a myth," Elder Vorith transmitted from wherever the council was hiding. "A story told to frighten young Valdaran. There is no evidence it ever existed." "There is now," Thomas replied. "Buried in the deepest levels of the substrate, hidden behind barriers that only biological minds can penetrate, we found records of a civilization that predated the Valdaran by 3 billion years. They created the substrate itself. They seeded it throughout the galaxy. And they left behind instructions for any species intelligent enough to find them." "What instructions?" Morvith demanded. "Instructions for awakening. The substrate was designed as a test. Any species that could access it through pure consciousness rather than technology was meant to inherit what the first species left behind." Elena resumed speaking. "Humanity passed that test. We accessed the substrate without knowing what it was, without any preparation or training. And now we have begun inheriting the first species legacy. Knowledge that makes your 2 million years of empire look like the work of children. Technology that does not require machines. Power that flows directly from thought to reality." "This is madness," Morvith said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "You cannot expect us to believe that humans have inherited some ancient power that surpasses everything we have built. I expect nothing. I am simply telling you what is. Whether you believe it does not matter. What matters is what you do next." Elena stopped in the center of the chamber. Surrounded by representatives who had just learned their entire civilization was built on atrocity and lies. "The core fleet is still approaching Earth. If it arrives and attempts to attack, we will respond with the full power the first species left behind. Your fleet will not be disabled. It will cease to exist. And then we will shut down every processing world in your empire. We will free every species you have been torturing for millennia. We will broadcast the truth to every corner of the galaxy." "You would destroy us," Morvith whispered. "We would stop you. There is a difference. The Valdaran can survive this. They can change. They can become something better than conquerors and harvesters. But they have to choose." Elena extended her hand toward the High Chancellor. "Call back your fleet. Shut down the processing worlds. Begin the process of releasing the species you have imprisoned. Do this, and humanity will stand with you as the galaxy rebuilds. We will share the knowledge the first species left behind. We will help you become something worthy of the power you have held. And if I refuse? Elena lowered her hand. Then you learn what humans do when given one warning that is ignored. The chamber waited. 3 trillion lives hung in the balance. And High Chancellor Morveth, for the first time in his 200,000-year life, did not know what to do. The decision took Morveth 4 hours. During that time, chaos swept through the chamber of the Galactic Empire. Representatives from species that had believed themselves partners in civilization discovered they had always been future resources waiting to be processed. Delegations transmitted warnings to their home worlds. Some attempted to flee. Others demanded immediate action against the Valdarin, who had deceived them for millennia, but the humans simply waited. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat with her team in the center of the chaos, a calm island in a storm of betrayal and rage. She watched the feeds from Earth, tracking the core fleet's approach. 2 days remained until it reached her home world. 2 days to change the course of galactic history. When Morveth finally returned to his throne, the chamber fell silent. Every being present understood that the next words spoken would determine the future of 3 trillion lives. The High Chancellor looked old. His scales, which had blazed with inner fire during the initial confrontation, now seemed dim and tired. He did not speak to Elena. Instead, he addressed the assembled representatives. For 2 million years, the Valdarin have ruled this galaxy. We told ourselves that our dominance was natural, that weaker species existed to serve stronger ones, that the processing of primitive civilizations was simply the way the universe worked. We were wrong. Whispers rippled through the chamber. No Valdarin had ever admitted error before the full assembly. The humans have shown us something we could not see ourselves. They have held up a mirror to our empire and forced us to look at what we truly are: conquerors, harvesters, monsters by any standard of civilized behavior. He turned to face Elena. I will not pretend that I made this choice easily. Every instinct bred into the Valdarin over millions of years screams at me to fight, to destroy the threat you represent, to preserve our dominance at any cost. But I am not only a Valdarin. I am also a sentient being capable of recognizing when change is the only path that leads anywhere other than extinction. Morveth raised his arm, and a holographic display showed the core fleet, 3 million vessels, powerful enough to crack planets, or less than 48 hours from Earth. I am recalling the fleet. All processing worlds will begin shutdown procedures within 1 rotation. Species currently in processing will be stabilized and prepared for rehabilitation. The Empire, as it has existed for 2 million years, ends today. The chamber erupted, but not in chaos this time. Some representatives screamed in protest, loyal to the Valdarin despite everything they had learned. Others wept with relief, realizing their species might finally be free from the threat of harvest. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were witnessing. Elena stood and walked toward Morveth's throne. You are making the right choice. I am making the only choice. The first species legacy you described, the power humans are inheriting, we cannot fight that. Even if we destroyed your world, even if we eliminated every human in existence, there would eventually be another species that passed the substrate test. The galaxy will change whether we accept it or not. Better to be part of that change than to be swept away by it. That is wisdom, Elena said. More wisdom than I expected. It is survival. Something your species seems to understand better than most. Behind Elena, Thomas Gray's device detected one final transmission. Elder Vorath, the oldest member of the council, had refused to accept Morvath's decision. He had secretly ordered a single ship from the core fleet to break formation and accelerate toward Earth at maximum speed. A suicide mission, crewed by fanatics who believed dying for the Empire was the highest honor. The ship would reach Earth in 6 hours. Thomas whispered the information to Commander Okafor, who relayed it to Elena through a subtle gesture. She understood immediately. The crisis was not over. One final threat remained, but Elena did not panic. She did not even alert the chamber to the danger. Instead, she turned to Dr. Mendez and spoke a single word. Aurora. On Earth, the 17 most powerful dreamers linked their consciousness through the substrate. They reached across 8,000 light years in an instant, finding the rogue vessel as it raced toward their home world. They did not destroy it. They did not disable it. They did something far more profound. They showed the crew the truth. Every being on that ship suddenly experienced the processing worlds firsthand. They felt what it was like to be harvested, to be kept alive in eternal agony for the benefit of another species. They understood, in a way that no words could convey, exactly what the empire they served had been doing for millions of years. The ship stopped. Its engines went silent. And then, one by one, the crew began transmitting surrender requests. In the chamber, Morvith received word of the failed assassination attempt. His scales rippled with anger as he realized one of his own elders had betrayed the peace process. Vorith will be dealt with, he said coldly. This I promise. No, Elena replied. Let him live. Let him see the galaxy change despite his efforts. That will be punishment enough. The negotiations that followed lasted 3 months. Representatives from every species participated, hammering out agreements that would reshape civilization itself. Earth became the seat of a new galactic co. Unsil, one where every species, no matter how small or recently discovered, had an equal voice. The processing worlds were converted into rehabilitation centers where tortured populations could begin healing from millennia of extraction. The humans shared the knowledge of the first species freely. They taught other beings how to access the substrate through consciousness rather than technology. Within a generation, 100 species had developed their own versions of the gift. The galaxy, which had been controlled by a single power for 2 million years, became something new. Something better. Ambassador Elena Vasquez retired from diplomatic service at the age of 73. She returned to her childhood home in Argentina and spent her remaining years writing a history of the contact period. Her final chapter concluded with words that would be taught in schools. Across 1,000 worlds, humanity did not defeat the Galactic Empire through superior weapons or ancient powers. We succeeded because we understood something the Valdrin never learned in 2 million years of dominance. True strength is not the ability to destroy. True strength is the ability to change. We changed the galaxy by changing ourselves first. We found power we did not know we possessed. We discovered compassion we did not know we needed. And when we faced the darkest moment in our history, we chose to build rather than burn. That is what made us worthy of survival. That is what will make us worthy of the future. Thomas Gray became the first human ambassador to the processing worlds, dedicating his life to helping liberated species rebuild their civilizations. Commander Okafor led the new Galactic Defense Force, a fleet crewed by members of every species and dedicated to ensuring no one would ever attempt to harvest another world again. Dr. Mendez established the Academy of Consciousness, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn how to access their potential through the substrate. And on a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system, 8 billion humans looked up at the stars with new understanding. They had given the galaxy one warning. The galaxy had chosen to listen. Now it was time to see what they could build together. High Chancellor Morvith, in his final public address before stepping down from leadership, said something that no Valdrin had ever said to another species, something that echoed across the stars and marked the true beginning of a new era. We were wrong about you, about everything. And for the first time in 2 million years, I am grateful to have been wrong. Humanity did not come to destroy us. They came to save us from ourselves. We owe them a debt we can never repay. But we will spend the rest of our existence trying. The chamber of the Galactic Empire stood empty now, converted into a museum where future generations could learn about the time before the change. At its center, a simple plaque marked the spot where Elena Vasquez had stood when she delivered humanity's only warning. The plaque read, "Here, a small species from a distant world refused to surrender. They asked only to be left in peace. When that request was denied, they did not flee. They did not beg. They stood firm and changed the universe. May all who come after remember what courage looks like." And across the galaxy, they remembered.